Hey everybody, Nate Carter here with today's Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. Well, I had a rough night's sleep last night and I woke up too early and was just kind of tired head and I got up and made my cup of coffee and I sat down to have a time with the Lord. And I just thought to myself, God, I really need to hear from you today. What do you have for me in your word? And I opened up my Bible reading plan to Matthew 1. And I thought, sweet, we're into the Gospels. And I opened up Matthew 1, and then I thought, oh, right. It starts with the genealogy. And I thought, God, I needed to hear from you this morning, and you gave me genealogy. So thanks for that. But something amazing stuck out to me, and I want to share it with you. Of course, it starts in Matthew 1:1, the book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham, and it goes on to list name after name after name that are Jesus's great-great-great-great-grandfathers. But in verse 6b, it says this, "And David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah." And wouldn't you know that just stuck out at me this morning as I was reading that verse just stuck out. I honestly just skimmed the rest of it, and then that stuck out. Because do you remember who the wife of Uriah was? Well, it was Bathsheba. It was the woman that was bathing on the rooftop, and David lusted after her, and he had an affair with her, and then later had Uriah killed, and it's just this horrible scandal. And so, first of all, that God would choose to bring His Son into the world with that as part of the history is kind of hard to believe and kind of hard to imagine. But at the same time, it gives me great hope. Because obviously this was the lowest point in David's life. This is where he committed adultery, and then he committed murder, and really, by all intents, especially in the court of public opinion, he should be completely written off of having anything to do with God's purposes, because he's obviously sinned, gravely sinned. And it reminded me, we've been talking this past week, Pastor Andy shared in the message that the story of this church, this podcast that we've been listening to as pastors, that tells the story of a church in which the pastor was discredited just because of his behavior and the way that he treated others and his character. And the church is gone. It ceases to exist now. And that would be the natural course of things for someone like David. You could imagine that God would just decide, I'm going to bring my Messiah in by another line. But here's the difference. David repented. And I feel like we've been hammering this in over the past few weeks, but I think it's worth hammering in that David was a man after God's own heart, and what set him apart from other people in the Bible and other Christians that we've known in our day is that he was willing to repent. He admitted his sin. Even his grave sin doesn't discount him from God's purposes because he's willing to repent and return to the Lord. And so because of that, God still continued to use him. And I love the fact that God is then willing to use, this son of this adulterous affair as part of his lineage. And that gives me great hope, guys, that there's still hope for you and me when we feel like we have screwed up beyond any hope of restoration. It reminds me of something that the youth pastor said in my last church. He said it several times, and I don't know if he made it up or if he got it from somewhere else, but I love it. God is in the business of redemption. God is in the business of redemption. So when you feel like you have done the worst possible thing, when you feel like your sin has finally discredited you from God's purposes, I want you to remember the lineage of Christ. I want you to remember David. I want you to remember that God used this sordid affair and redeemed it for His purposes. And it shows that there is nothing beyond God's control. And we know beyond that that nothing can stop what God is planning to do, not even death itself. We're going to sing this Sunday a song that uses that line, that there's nothing that's beyond what God can do. Even death is not beyond God's conquering. And obviously we know that Jesus overcame the grave. And that's our victory, is in Jesus' victory over death. If death won't stop him, then there is nothing else that could stop God from using you or me for his purposes. So be encouraged when you feel like you're at the end of your rope, when you feel like maybe it's the last straw and perhaps you feel like God's going to write you off. God can still use you. He still has purposes for you today and for his kingdom. So be encouraged with that today, friends. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next time on the Cornerstone Connection.